There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from no longer being able to participate in things the way you used to. Nothing externally has changed. You can still be around the same people, have the same conversations, sit in the same rooms, but internally, something is no longer lining up. It's a lack of resonance. And that misalignment is quiet enough that most people won't notice it, but strong enough that you can't ignore it. Something's just simply off. It shows up in moments that used to feel normal, conversations that once felt easy start to feel like you are translating in real time. Not because you don't understand what's being said, but because you can feel what's not being said underneath it. The pauses, the deflections, the things that are being avoided. You're hearing the words, but you're also registering everything that is being said. But you are also registering everything that is not being said. And that changes how you relate. You don't respond the same way. You don't engage as quickly. You don't fill the space the way you used to. And that creates a distance that isn't always visible, but it's there. You can feel it. Other people may be able to feel it a bit too. At first, you try to override it. You try to go back into the old way of interacting. You may even tell yourself it's not a big deal, that you're overthinking, or that you can just relax and be how you were before. But that's not what happens. Something in you won't fully cooperate. Because once you start seeing things clearly, your participation changes. You can still be present, but you are not as available for certain dynamics. And that creates a gap between you and people who are still operating inside them. That gap is where the loneliness begins. Not because you've lost everyone, but because you've lost the version of connection that depended on you not seeing what you now see. And that's not something people talk about directly. They certainly don't go deep into it. They talk about awakening like it's expansion, like it's clarity, like it's freedom. And of course, all of those things are true and very real. But there's also this quieter phase where you're in the between stage. You're not who you were, but you are not fully anchored in what you are becoming either. So you're moving through your life with a different level of awareness, but without a fully formed environment that matches it. And it can feel a little scary at times, can feel isolating. You start noticing where conversations don't go deeper, where people have no desire to look at what's actually happening. It's as if they're running a script. or program. Where connection depends on staying within a certain range of awareness. And you realize that if you stay in those spaces, you have to limit how present you are in your own perception. So you begin pulling back. Doesn't have to be dramatic. Doesn't have to be in a way that creates obvious conflict. But internally, you stop offering the same level of access. You stop engaging in things that require you to ignore what you can clearly see. And that shift changes all of your relationships. It does. Some people feel it immediately. Some don't. Some lean in. Some pull away. Some try to bring you back into the old dynamic without realizing that something fundamental has changed. And you are left navigating how to stay connected without stepping out of yourself. That's where it gets complex. Because it's not as simple as cutting people off. It's not always clean. It's not always obvious. It's a constant calibration between being honest about what you experience and recognizing that not everyone is in the same place. Everyone is operating from different levels of consciousness. And if there's no resonance, they can't hear you. So you may find yourself speaking less in certain moments, not because you don't have anything to say, but because you can see where it would go. You can see how it would be received. And you are no longer interested in forcing something to land where it doesn't. You allow it to just be. It is what it is. That restraint can feel like distance, and over time, it can feel like loneliness. Not because you don't have people around you, but because fewer interactions feel real. It's like a lack of authenticity. You're not getting the same level of recognition, not because people don't care, but because they're not seeing from the same place. They are viewing the world from a very different lens than you. Sometimes that can make you question things. Not in the way you used to question yourself before, but in a different way. You start wondering where you fit now. How to build connection that doesn't require you to filter your awareness. How to exist in spaces that are not fully aligned without closing yourself off completely. That is a different kind of work. It requires patience. It requires discernment. It requires being honest about what no longer works without rushing to replace it or fix it. Because this phase is not just about loss. It's about reorganization. But reorganization takes time. And in that time, there's space space where old connections don't feel the same and new ones have not fully formed yet. That space can feel empty if you interpret it that way. But it's not empty. Not at all. It's unstructured. And there is a difference. You are not being removed from connection. You are being moved out of dynamics that required you to not fully be where you are. That does not immediately replace itself with something new. There's a period where you are learning how to relate from a different place. How to speak without over-explaining. How to connect without adjusting your perception to maintain comfort. How to stay present without collapsing into old patterns. That takes time. Be gentle with yourself. In that time, it can feel like you are alone in a way that you weren't before. But what's actually happening is that your relationships are reorganizing around something more stable. Not immediate, not constant, but more real. And the more you stay in that, the more your environment begins to reflect it. Not all at once, but gradually. You start encountering people where there's less translation required, less filtering, less managing, where conversation does not feel like effort, where you don't have to step out of your own awareness to stay connected. And those connections feel different. Quieter, softer, yet more direct, more stable, more authentic. But you only get there if you don't abandon yourself in the in between. That's the part that matters. Not rushing to fill the space, but allowing that space and trusting that space to bring in the people, places, and things truly aligned with your soul's path. And refusing to go back to what felt easier but required you to disconnect from yourself. It's not convincing yourself that nothing changed just to avoid feeling alone, but staying where you are, even when it's uncomfortable, because it's accurate, it's aligned, it's honest. If you've reached this point, the loneliness you are feeling is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is no longer aligned. And you are learning how to exist without forcing alignment where it isn't there. Stop doing that. And that's not failure, that's precision. And not everyone is going to like it. And that's okay. It's what allows something more real to form. If you're in that space right now, you're not doing it wrong. You're in the part that most people try to skip. Being present and staying with it. Because what comes next does not require you to self-abandon in order to belong. And that changes everything. It truly does. If this resonates, stay with me. Hit that like and subscribe button. I am Kat Grace, and I appreciate you being here and showing up, being honest, and doing the hard work to heal and align with truth in your soul. Until next time, namaste.